Shabbat Shalom, everyone. Thanks for joining me for another Torah session. We're going to begin, as we always do, by taking the news. A lot of stuff going on. Put it off to the side. Got our Tanakh. We're going to focus on some Torah for a little bit. Got my Kippot. Who's the one to wear today? I think. This blue one's nice. Let's wear that. Hope everyone had a great Thanksgiving. You were all safe and you had some turkey. I had a leak in my roof, but we fixed it. It's all fine. Lots going on. 2020 is a heck of a year. So before we read, we do our blessing over the Torah. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam Asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asuk b'divrei Torah. Blessed are you, Adonai our God, the sovereign of the universe, who hallows us with mitzvot, commanding us to engage with words of Torah. I'll fix this a little bit. There we go. That feels better. So, we're going to open up. And we're going to read a story that I'm sure many of you have heard at least once. But if not, hey, learn something new every day. The same night, he, being Jacob, taking his 2 wives and his 2 maidservants and his 11 children, he crossed the ford of Yabok, and after taking them across the stream, he sent across all his possessions. Jacob was left alone, and a man wrestled with him until the break of dawn. When he saw that he had not prevailed against him, he wrenched Jacob's hip at its socket, so that the socket of his hip was strained as he wrestled with him. Then he said, "Let me go, for dawn is breaking." But Jacob answered, "I will not let you go unless you bless me." Said the other, "What is your name?" He replied, "Jacob." Said he, "Your name shall no longer be Jacob, but Israel, for you have striven with divine beings and prevailed." Jacob asked, "Pray, tell me your name." But he said, "You must not ask my name." And he took leave of him there. So Jacob named the place Peniel, meaning I have seen a divine being face to face, yet my life has been preserved. The sun rose upon him as he passed Peniel, limping on his hip. So, this is the story of Jacob wrestling with the angel. In the text it says a man, because when divine beings appear in that particular translation, it doesn't always say angels. Sometimes it says men. We saw this with Abraham. 3 men show up to his tent, but they're actually God in disguise. In that case, it's unclear whether it's God, God's self, or an angel showing up on God's behalf. But either way, it's some divine being. And Jacob wrestles with him and fights for a long time throughout the night, it says. And then at the end, the angel leaves and wrenches Jacob's hip out of its socket, so he gets not like a broken hip, but like a strained hip. He has to walk with a limp, it said at the very end. And so the angel leaves, and Jacob is changed. Jacob gets a new name. And this is obviously a very important name for us. We're called the children of Israel. We're not called the children of Jacob. We don't use that name. Obviously, the Jewish country is called Israel. Shema Yisrael is about us, about Israel. Sometimes we're called the people of Israel. Sometimes we're just called Israel. The Torah uses the word in a lot of different ways. But it's a very important name for us as Jews. And it comes from this event where one of our ancestors in the Torah struggles with a divine being, but doesn't win. But he doesn't lose, but he doesn't win. And I guess if you don't win, you lose. I don't know. Hard to say. But if you don't lose, you win. Either way, he definitely doesn't win. And so he's still changed by this, and it's still a positive experience. We read it as a positive experience. The rabbis teach it as a positive experience. Israel is a positive name for us. And so I want to talk about struggles and encounters that we can have where we don't win, but we're changed, and things are different than they were before. We may not get a new name out of it, that we may learn something about ourselves or about our relationship to our community that we didn't know before, and that we probably couldn't have known any other way except by going through that experience, which may be unpleasant. On the one hand, he gets this name Jacob, or he gets the name Israel. That's great. On the other hand, his hip gets strained, pulled out of its socket, and that hurts. And he has to limp for, I believe, the rest of his life. They obviously don't have doctors the way that we do now, but I don't think that it ever fully heals. And so we can have encounters where we're changed for the rest of our life, sometimes in plainly positive ways, and sometimes in ways that are less positive. Obviously, a hip being pulled out isn't terrible. Jacob can still do things in his life. There are ways that we can be hurt by encounters that aren't debilitating. Obviously, any disability that we might get from an encounter we can overcome, and that we can be possibly even empowered by it, but at the very least we may have a disability but without being disabled by it. But it is something that we need to recognize nonetheless. And so this is a great time to think about different ways that you can have encounters that maybe don't go your way, but that you can, I don't want to say spin, but that you can put a positive outlook on. The pandemic is not a very good example, but it's the one that I'm going to try to use, where maybe you have been using this time that you've been at home differently than you would have if you could have gone out. You might like what you've been doing more, or you might be like what you've been doing less. And it's things that you wouldn't be doing otherwise, at least. So when the pandemic is over, which hopefully will be in a couple of months as these vaccines start to roll out to the rest of the population, that you'll learn something about yourself through the experience of the pandemic, and you'll carry through the rest of your life changed. Not because you beat it, not because it defeated you, but because you encountered it and left the encounter differently. A lot of personal growth isn't because we win something or because we lose something, but because we encounter it, and we carry that encounter with us regardless of the outcome. So, with all that in mind, we're going to play some of Debbie Friedman. I didn't get it set up on my phone yet, so give me a sec, but I can just keep on talking during it. Remember, this is a prayer for healing. So if you know someone who is hurting, whether from the coronavirus directly or from coronavirus indirectly, or maybe from loneliness or from something else, maybe you know someone whose hip is hurt, and you can think about them in particular. But whatever it is, take this time to think about someone or something that needs healing, and it's a good time to reflect on that. Here we go. Okay, so as always, thank you very much for spending this time with me. Be healthy, and I hope you're finding good ways to keep yourself occupied during this time. Get outside as long as the weather allows. If you want to chat about this Torah study or anything else, really, feel free to email me to the Jewish Life account. And Shabbat Shalom. I will see you next week.